raised on it. Worked hard and played on it. We had it made on it. We were born and raised.
Hi, everybody. It's June 5th, 2018. Come on in.
Come into our living room.
We got 3 hours
Hang with us this
of
morning.
cable casting starting right now. Good morning,
Welcome to
Bobby.
the show, Brian. Here you
Well,
go.
yeah, I was just tweeting out something about Philadelphia and how do the fans feel about their team not going to the White House. The president, they were only going to send about 9 players. The president said, if you're only going to send 9, forget it. It's off. But the fans are still welcome.
That's right.
So you got about 1,000 could be showing up.
We're going to be throwing a big birthday bash for America instead.
Right.
Well, a
Right.
celebration for America at 3 o'clock. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Plus, there was that ruling yesterday by the U.S. Supreme Court, 7-2, finding for that man. That's Jack Phillips. He's the owner of Master Cake Shop out in Colorado. The Supreme Court said that essentially he won his case because the commission out in Colorado did not take into consideration his feelings, only the feelings of the people who had brought the lawsuit. So we're going to find out where it all goes for him from here.
Yeah, the first cable
later
news
on.
interview he's giving, a big win for him. So we're going to talk to him at 8:20 later on this morning.
And Larry Kudlow at the bottom of the hour with some breaking news on the president and trade.
8 o'clock.
Yeah.
I believe he's coming up.
8 o'clock.
Yeah,
I believe
big show
so.
ahead. But there is a lot going on this morning as it relates to North Korea.
It's a date. The White House revealing more information on the high-stakes summit between President Trump and Kim Jong-un, now just 1 week away.
But the anticipated talks are being met with a list of demands now from the Democrats.
Hey, yeah, where were those demands when the Iranian deal was up for grabs? Griff Jenkins is live in Washington with the latest. And Griff, you're always smiling.
Well, it's always good to join you. Good
All
morning,
right.
guys. I tell you who's not smiling are the Democrats. They're feeling a bit left out. That summit starts a week from today, June 12th, 9 a.m. Singapore time. That's Monday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern here in the U.S. That historic summit begins, according to White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders, who just days after receiving a letter, Kim Jong-un's number 2, hand-delivering that letter right there to the president. Now, Sanders wouldn't go into specifics on what was in it, calling it interesting, saying progress had been made, but she also notes, in the meantime, sanctions remain in place.
Our policy hasn't changed, and as the president stated, we have sanctions on. They're very powerful, and we would not take those sanctions off unless North Korea denuclearized.
Now, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is issuing a list of demands in a letter to the president detailing what would be acceptable to Democrats, saying North Korea must agree to, among other things, dismantle all nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons programs, suspend ballistic missile tests, and commit to anywhere, anytime inspections. Schumer also had this to say.
If President Trump meets with Kim Jong-un and receives a deal that truly lives up to these principles, he will have made the world a much safer place. But if he tries to reach a deal with Kim Jong-un just for the sake of reaching a deal, then he'll have been bested at the negotiating table yet again.
As for where things stand, guys, the president meets with Secretary Pompeo for lunch behind closed doors as teams in Singapore and on the DMZ continue preparations.
All right,
Guys?
you, Griff.
All right, Griff, thanks.
That is such politics. If this were a Democratic president, by the way, doing exactly what President Trump is doing, you think they would have that reaction?
They didn't.
Yeah.
We already saw it with Iran. But meanwhile, the Korean Herald is saying that they've already met 5 times, and the two sides appear to agree that North Korea will denuclearize around 2020 in a short period of time. They're also talking about transferring some of the nuclear weapons out of the country within months. We'll take them. We've taken them before. Maybe China wants them. They got them already. Very interesting to see how this moves forward.
I wonder if that is some of the stuff that was in the great big envelope that got delivered a couple
Right.
of days ago. By the way, it looks as if the hotel where this could all happen could probably be the Shangri-La in Singapore.
Oh, I've stayed at the Shangri-La because I used to live in Singapore with my family. It's
There
a
you go.
beautiful hotel. I wonder who's paying those still. Is it part of the Shangri-La that's going to pay for
I
Kim
think the
Jong-un to
United
stay
States
there?
is paying for his stay.
But evidently they're insulted by the fact that we might pay. So we have to to somehow get them the money, slip it under the mattress. I'm not sure, but the
Maybe a
Shangri-La,
voucher.
do they offer a king bed or double beds?
Good question, Pride. But speaking of being insulted, that is how the president is feeling this morning, I believe, with the Eagles. They have now said, only 9 of them at this point were
Going to the New York
agreeing to
Times,
go
yeah.
to the White House. Of course, they won the Super Bowl. The president said, Fine, then. This whole thing is off. No one from the Eagles team is coming to the White House. Instead, we're going to throw a birthday bash for America. This is a statement from the president himself. He says they disagree with their president because he insists that they proudly stand for the national anthem, hand on heart, in honor of the great men and women of our military and the people of our country. The Eagles wanted to send a smaller delegation, but the 1,000 fans planning to attend the event, they deserve better. These fans are still invited to the White House to be part of a different type of a ceremony, one that will honor our great country, pay tribute to the heroes who fight to protect it, and loudly and proudly play the national anthem.
So no problem when the Astros wanted to come. No problem when the college champs want to come. But again, like the Golden State Warriors who said, we don't think we're showing up, the Eagles stay home. This would have been a perfect opportunity to say, okay, Mr. President, I disagree with you, whether it's the anthem or your politics. Have a conversation.
Right.
If you ever met the president, he's open. He has conversations with all sides all the time. Come in and let's talk about what's happening with the league. You could start bridging things instead of just staying home. So now they got to go to the facility on Tuesday instead of the White House today.
In fact, there were a number of Democrats who invited the team to show up on Capitol Hill, and they will give them a tour. Apparently, one of the worries was that they would have the event at the White House, and then when they played the national anthem, somebody might kneel. That was one of the worries. But obviously, the message from the president is, if you don't want to stand for the national anthem, you're not invited. The mayor of the great city of Philadelphia, Jim Kinney, put out a statement and said these are players who stand up for the causes they believe in and who contribute in meaningful ways to their community. Disinviting them from the White House only proves that our president is not a true patriot, but a fragile egomaniac obsessed with crowd size and afraid of the embarrassment of throwing a party to which no one wants to attend.
So what is his point? That he wants to raise his profile? If you invite 70 players, world champions, to the White House and 9 show up, why bother going through the invitations? Clearly the Eagles saying, I'd rather do anything else. So the president says, I'm a busy guy. I'll do something else. What choice do you have? It's not like he told 70 people to stay home. They chose to stay home.
Yeah. To your point, what do these players not get about what's going on in the country right now? If you took a poll about the national anthem and whether or not you should stand for the anthem, I'd want to be where the American people are. And they all say, stand for the national,
but they do.
Stand for that American
flag. To the Eagles' credit, Abby, they do stand. And they're upset that the president weighed in a couple of weeks ago with us. And he said, listen, I'm not happy that you're even staying in the locker room. I'm not happy that you have an option to stay in the locker room and not stand. You should just stand for the national anthem. That should be the rule. The players were offended by that. They happen to have an owner that called this president, called his presidency disastrous. So, Jeff Lurie said he was going to show up, but that's how he felt. But still, at least he was going to show up.
Usually these kind of events where a winning team comes are non-political. Today, it's very political. Nonetheless, the show will go on. The fans are still invited. Everybody's, apparently the White House is trying to contact everybody. Come on back, 3 o'clock. I think the Marine Corps band is going to be performing. There will be and you can imagine they'll be standing for the
I still think the 9 players should have been invited. Show the others what they're missing out on. What an honor it is to be the White House, regardless of who's president. I know you disagree with me on that, Brian, but be the bigger person here. Keep those 9 players, have them come, and remind the other players what they're missing.
But, Abby, I know what you're saying, but the optics matter. To see the president walk into the room and see 9 players behind him, maybe
you're saying that numbers
most
matter?
of the coaches, out of 70, it's not the basketball team where you got 10 or 12. You're going to have basically the trainer, the owner, and a handful of guys. So now Philadelphia gets to go home to their facility and have practice.
Yeah. I think of my brothers in the Navy. They don't ask what president they're serving. They serve this country. And if they got the opportunity to go to the White House, they would be so honored and so proud to be there.
But Abby, your brothers would stand for the anthem.
Absolutely. That's not even a question.
But that was a predicament that we are presented with, given now the situation that the NFL has placed the teams in. They've come up with a new policy where if you don't want to stand, just stay in the locker room.
Nick Saban told his college players, I know they're college, he says, everyone's going. I don't care what your political view is. Everyone's going. Your national championship out of the White House. Why can't the owner just say, everybody go? I know where you stand. Use this opportunity to sit down in the East Room. You could do this below the wire. Kellyanne Conway, big Eagles fan, could have facilitated the whole thing.
Have a conversation with the president.
Yeah.
Tell him exactly what you think. Use that opportunity. I think it's a great point. Tell us what you think. Friends@foxnews.com. Did the president do the right thing here? All right, there's a lot going on, though. I want to bring you some other headlines. We are following a hunch from a retired detective helped lead police right to a suspected serial killer, Dwight Jones, found shot dead in an Arizona hotel room after allegedly murdering 6 people in a matter of 6 days. He then killed himself as officers closed in. At least 4 victims are now linked to his 2009 divorce. His ex-wife claims her current husband, a retired detective, realized that connection and then called the police. Wow. Yikes. Also today, millions of voters will head to the polls in 8 different states. All eyes are on the state of California, where Democrats hope to flip at least 10 congressional seats needed to take control of the U.S. House. The gubernatorial race also heating up. Democratic Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom looking to succeed his boss, Jerry Brown. Republican John Cox hopes an endorsement from President Trump is enough to secure a second place. The top 2 primary candidates from either party will then advance to the November election. It could be an interesting one for Democrats. We'll see how that plays out. And a former Navy sailor pardoned by President Trump set to sue the Obama administration, Christian Saucier, spent a year in federal prison after photos of a nuclear submarine were found on his cell phone. Saucier argues that Hillary Clinton faced similar accusations but got to walk free. He joined us on Fox and Friends right after receiving that pardon. Listen.
It was a clear attempt by the Department of Justice, under Obama, to use me as a scapegoat to take the heat off Hillary Clinton.
His suit will name former President Obama and former FBI Director James Comey, among others. And First Lady Melania Trump honoring the families of heroes who made the ultimate sacrifice. More than 40 Gold Star families attending a special reception at the White House yesterday. The First Lady tweeting these photos, saying she and the president were honored to pay tribute to those heroes. It was her first public appearance since undergoing kidney surgery last month. All that speculation, there she is.
There she is. All right, coming up.
All right, Republicans are working together to plan their message for the midterms. Our next guest shared her ideas and the stats with the Republican caucus. She'll be joining us live to tell us what the message was to the right.
Plus, this woman's appearance on a TV show ended up saving her life, all thanks to a doctor watching the show at home. The incredible story you have to hear coming up on this Tuesday, Fox and Friends.
GOP senators reportedly polling their colleagues about which legislative initiatives to tackle ahead of the midterms to resonate with the voters. And they're not alone. House GOP officials met to brainstorm how to save their majority. They were presented with various plans from the Cook Report on down, including one from our next guest, who really resonated according to almost all reports. That person is joining us right now. Kristen Solis Anderson joins us. She's a Washington Examiner columnist, and she's an analyst that her presentation really resonated. First off, you talk about headwinds and tailwinds. What are the headwinds with the Republican Party?
So the problem Republicans are going to face is that Democrats are really fired up right now. Not even looking at polls, looking at just who has shown up to vote in special elections, in primary elections. Democrats who never vote are turning out much more frequently. So Republicans are going to have to match that enthusiasm on their side of the aisle.
And the way to do that might be with impeachment and Pelosi. Did you find that?
Well, there's poll after poll that shows Nancy Pelosi is one of the least popular figures in American politics. And she has said that if Democrats take back the House, she's going to be running for Speaker. She wants to continue leading. So that's certainly one piece of the puzzle. But impeachment is another. There are even voters who don't love President Trump. Maybe they don't love the tweets, but they don't want to see him impeached. And there is a large portion of the Democratic base that wants to see impeachment. As soon as Democrats take Congress, they want to see impeachment begin. And for voters in the middle, that's just more obstruction, that's more gridlock. That's not what they're looking for out of Washington.
So the president's poll numbers are improving. The economy is soaring. That's good. But it allows the Americans to focus on what? Health care. That does not seem good for either party, does it?
Healthcare is an issue that really fires up the Democratic base because they are worried about wanting to protect Obamacare. They think the longer Republicans have control, the more chances they'll have to try to take it apart. Meanwhile, for Republican voters, it doesn't energize them as much because Republicans have been in charge for 2 years and did not fully repeal and replace. So it's a tougher issue, with folks feeling good about the economy. Now they're going, well, what about those things I have to spend money on at home? And healthcare is a huge expense.
So we watched the generic poll shrink. By just all accounts, it's shrinking. You can play with the numbers. If you have 6 months left, what should Republicans focus on to make the most ground and to make the most possible ground up?
I think Republicans need to keep talking about the economy, and they need to keep selling the tax reform plan that they passed back in December. If you look at the generic ballot, if you look at the president's job approval, it's right when that bill passed that all of those numbers started to get a lot better, because it gives Republicans the opportunity to say, look, this great economic growth, it's because of our policies. It's because of our economic worldview. Don't you guys want more of that? That's the message they can sell to voters if they talk more about that tax reform
and Kristen,
bill.
the first week in June, does it look like the Senate's secure and the House is a toss-up? Was that your message?
Well, I think the Senate is in much better shape than the House, in part because Republicans have the Democrats on such defense. There's so many vulnerable Democratic senators. In states that President Trump won, we're going to have to explain why they voted against the president's agenda time and time again to an electorate that likes the president.
Yeah, both sides. 6 months to go. Whoever has the better game plan will win. This is not baked in. The cake is not baked yet. Kristen Soltis Anderson, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
All right. 20 minutes after the top of the hour, the head of Starbucks is brewing up political rumors after stepping down. Yep, is he going to run for president? Would you vote for him? Plus, call it a free-for-all. One mayor in California wants to give everyone $500. Is that a good idea? We'll debate that next.
Got some quick Tuesday morning headlines for you. First up, Hamas is calling for more bloodshed today on the Israel-Gaza border. Thousands of Palestinians expected to riot to mark the 51st anniversary of the Six-Day War, which expanded Israel's borders. At least 120 Palestinians have been killed in protests since the month of April. And nearly 70 people now confirmed dead in the devastating volcano eruption in Guatemala. First responders digging through ash and debris for survivors. But it is so hot in some places, it's burning their shoes. And a miracle among the devastation when a rescuer was able to pull a baby from the rubble, and the baby is alive. That is a miracle. All right,
Unbelievable.
Abby?
What a beautiful baby. Thank you, Steve. All right, well, Stockton, California Mayor Michael Tubbs planning to give a guaranteed universal income of $500 a month to residents. The 18-month experiment, scheduled to take effect in 2019, is the latest effort to combat poverty and would be privately funded by the Economic Security Project. So the question is this a good idea? Is this going to work? Here to debate, Vice Chairman for the Center for Urban Renewal and Education, Mark Little, and co-founder of the Universal Income Project, Jim Pugh. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for being with us so early.
Good morning.
All right, Mark, start with you. Look, I think what everyone wants here is to give people opportunity to succeed. So you look at this latest experiment that's going on in California. At the end of 18 months, where do you think we're going to be?
Well, I tell you, if it's about a handout, you're not going to be any place different than where you are now. I mean, let's put this in context. We are talking about a guaranteed income in the middle of a booming economy where jobs are being created at a record pace. I mean, at Cure, we care about folks who are hurting and folks who need assistance. I was one of those people when I was shot and gunned down at USC and left permanently disabled. It wasn't a handout that I needed. It was opportunity that I needed. The road to success is not a handout. The road to success is personal responsibility and self-reliance.
Jim?
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that basic income is not a handout, it's a hand up. It sets up people to achieve their own long-term economic success. Our country is founded on the idea that if you work hard, you should be able to get ahead. But if you travel around the country now, it's obvious to see that that's true for fewer and fewer people. Folks are working harder than ever, but many are being left behind. If you give people a base amount of cash every month, not only does it help them get up onto their own 2 feet, it will also drive their local economies when they spend that money at the local grocery store or shopping mall or restaurants, which in turn creates local job opportunities.
Jim, that didn't work in Finland because other nations have tried this out. Finland is one of those, a recent example, where they, for universal guaranteed income, they paid $685 a month for people below a certain income level. They're now canceling that program. They've obviously seen that it's not done what they hoped it would. So how do we not learn from those other examples?
We don't know what Finland's program does yet. They haven't canceled a program. They're continuing with the original program. They've just decided with the new government not to do an extension that had been asked for. So we've yet to see what happens in Finland, but we've seen in other places that this program can have a really transformational effect on people's lives.
Mark, you say that this is personal to you, that you have had your own life experiences that have taught you how to think now about all of this. Tell us about that.
Well, I'll just tell you that in 1987, I was shot by a gang member in an attempted armed robbery. And when I came out of rehab, I checked myself out of rehab, and I worked 2 jobs. I had the opportunity to be on financial assistance, and I said that is not the life that I want to live. I think that assistance is important, but when it becomes a lifestyle, you have a problem. We look at what happened when we made that mistake in 1935 that led to fathers leaving the homes, and now we have 73% of black homes led by single mothers. And we know that when there are 2 parents in the home who are working, certainly the statistics show that 2% of those people are in poverty, as opposed to African American mothers, single, 85% are in poverty. That is not the direction that we need to go. We need to, like the mayor of Stockton himself, who is the youngest mayor in Stockton, first African American, he didn't get there by not working hard. This program and programs like this have been studied since 1968 through 1980 in this country under Reagan, under Carter, and under Nixon. And they failed because they produced lesser work hours that ultimately led to lesser income for the recipients.
All right.
This program hurts recipients. It doesn't help them.
We will see where this ends in 18 months. Mark, Jim, great to have you on this morning. Good to see you both.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, coming up, the left is launching a culture war on conservatives, from cheering the end of Roseanne to liberal comedians attacking the White House. Our next guest says it is time for conservatives to start fighting back, and he's got a plan for that. Plus, they say that beans are good for your heart. It turns out they're also good for taking down armed criminals. That's a tease for you. More on that coming up.
The animating question for me is always, what's going to happen next? If people sense that you're not pushing an agenda, you're not pulling your punches, they're going to rely on you. It's a commitment to the truth. One of the advantages, I think, of having been in this business so long, you're able to detect what is real, what is important, and what's just political noise.
All right, is it me, or is it every day there seemed to be a new culture war brewing, and many of it is targeting conservatives?
A lot of people have noticed that, Brian, whether it is applauding the end to Roseanne, hateful comments from comedians, big tech companies trying to silence conservatives, or challenging patriotism by kneeling during NFL games. Our next guest says it's time for conservatives to build their own cultural institutions. But how do you do that?
Town Hall columnist Kurt Schlichter wrote all about it in a new op-ed, and he joins us now. Kurt, great to see you this morning. What is your plan? What do conservatives need to do?
Well, conservatives need to do a number of things, Abby. But the first things we need to do is realize we're in a fight. You're right. There is a culture war going on. And the liberal elite are the aggressors. They're coming at us left and right. You know, they got really angry when we got all uppity and elected Donald Trump, when we refused to elect the person they told us we were supposed to. And now they're kind of sulking. We're getting a lot of passive aggression as well as aggressive aggression. And we need to realize we're in a fight.
Because you say cultural elites are trying to marginalize average Americans, and conservatives in particular.
Absolutely. They can't get us out of government because we voted in a Republican Congress, we voted in a Republican president. But they do control the institutions. They got Hollywood, and they got academia, and they even have big business. You know, this myth about giant corporations being run by a bunch of conservatives, that's just crazy talk. It's just not true. Look at Starbucks, for instance. This is a giant corporation, and it's woker than woke. We need to understand, as normal conservative Americans, that, you know, everybody who controls the heights of power in the culture outside of the government is against us. And once we realize that, then we can take action.
You know, what do you say to Democrats watching right now? Say, really? We feel like we're at war undoing the regulations, those regulations, especially on the environment. They feel as though President Trump is going to war on everything President Obama has done. They feel like they're under attack.
Well, it's called a counterattack. I learned about those at Fort Benning. See, when they start a fight, we fight back. And what we're doing it is exercising our power really the only way we can, which is at the ballot box. And the ballot box has allowed us to control the legislature and control the executive.
Right.
And we're undoing a regimen of regulation and rules that we didn't ask for, that we didn't approve of, that were kind of instituted with a pen and a phone.
Do you think that Roseanne Barr should have been fired?
I think ABC can do whatever it wants with its brand. I think ABC was looking for an excuse to get rid of what it saw as a cultural hot potato. And the cultural hot potato was a show that was perceived as being sympathetic to the kind of people who elected Donald Trump. Whether that's all true or not doesn't matter. What really matters is what the executives in Hollywood have to do at cocktail parties when their friends gather around them and say, how can you do that?
Sure.
It's ABC's right to get rid of somebody who doesn't share their values. That's fine, but we got to understand that they had a problem with Roseanne.
She tweeted something racist. It wasn't about whether they agreed with her values or not, right?
Well, what she tweeted was tacky, and I don't know anybody who agrees with it.
And that's why that's why ABC did what they did. If you'd like to read his town hall op-ed, check it out online. Kurt, we thank you very much for joining us today from LA.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Good to see you this morning.
All
right, to some other headlines we are following. A win for religious freedom. The Supreme Court siding with a Christian baker who refused to make a cake for a same-sex wedding due to his religious views. The 7-2 ruling determining the Colorado Civil Rights Commission showed an anti-religious bias when ruling against Jack Phillips. That baker, Jack Phillips, he is joining us live later on this morning. The first cable news interview you will see with him. Also, this Starbucks executive is brewing up presidential rumors. Howard Schultz announcing he will step down as the company's executive chairman later this month. The 64-year-old vocal critic of the Trump administration telling the New York Times he is considering public service, saying this, quote, "For some time now, I've been deeply concerned about our country, the growing division at home, and our standing in the world." Stay tuned for that. And a man swinging a hammer gets bushwhacked. A sheriff's deputy using 2 cans of baked beans to take down a man threatening people with a hammer at a Florida grocery store. It gave other officers just enough time to tackle and arrest him. The deputy says that the cans of Bush's extra brown sugar baked beans were an alternative to using deadly force. I'm going to use that in the future. All right, buying a beach house may have just saved this woman's life. Nicole McGinnis recently appeared on the HGTV show Beachfront Bargain Hunt to celebrate the end of her brain cancer treatments. But a doctor watching at home noticed a lump on her neck and contacted her on Facebook. She then got checked out and is now undergoing treatment for thyroid cancer. Back in 2015, another viewer spotted a lump on an HGTV star, which turned out to be cancer as well. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable indeed. Saved a life.
A reminder, reach out to people if you got a concern, I guess.
All right.
Yeah, especially if they're on television.
We're on television, and so is Janice Dean with
look
the
okay?
weather. Yeah, so far.
You look wonderful,
We're not
Janice.
doctors, though.
We will. Do you have an email address in case something? All right.
Oh my goodness. Hi, how are you today? Let's take a look at the current temperatures. 58 here in New York City, a little cooler than average across the Great Lakes and the Northeast. 53 in Cincinnati. Kansas City, we've got 57 for you. There's our past 24 hours, so we have the potential for some stronger to severe storms later on this afternoon as we get the daytime heating, and then continuing into perhaps the overnight. The highest risk for severe storms will be across the northern plains, but we can't rule out maybe some hail damaging winds across the central U.S. and parts of the Gulf Coast states. So watching that. There are your highs today, really warm across the central U.S. 94 in Dallas, 91 in Kansas City, even Minneapolis at 80. We're at 76 in New York City. And just a quick look, active in the Pacific as well. This will be our first named storm in the next 5 days, we think. The good news is this storm will be moving away from land. That's the way we like it. We could have lots of hurricanes as long as they move away from land.
Yeah.
Back to you.
Not good for the fish.
Well, the fish can handle it.
Right. That's why they're in the
We
water.
could ask
Or
them.
the people.
Right.
Thank you,
All right,
Janice.
thank you. Coming up, Congresswoman Mia Love, National Economic Council Director Larry Kudlow, and Chris Kobach, the Secretary of State of my home state of Kansas, all here live.
It's like we're bragging.
We are.
Kind of.
Some
And
it.
President Trump says he has the absolute right to pardon himself, but won't have to because he says he's done nothing wrong. What does Judge Napolitano think? He is on the case, and he joins us next.
All rise, here comes the judge.
Nobody's gotta worry about nothing. Don't go hitting that panic button. It ain't worth spilling your dream. Everything's gonna be.
All right, some quick headlines now. Dolly Parton may be working 9 to 5 on her latest project with Netflix. The country singer is planning an 8-episode series with each chapter based on one of her songs. It's set to debut next year. Well, look at all the lyrics. And a new Apple feature will shame you for using your phone too much. The monitoring app called Screen Time helps you track how much time you spend on your iPhone. Users can view detailed activity reports and even set up time restrictions for specific apps, websites, or categories. For us, it's kind of weird because we kind of have a job that wants us to stay on top of things.
But it's when we're not at the job. That's what they're trying to do.
Is that the voice in my head?
Meanwhile, President Trump weighing in as the self-pardon scenario takes center stage, tweeting, quote, "As has been stated by numerous legal scholars, I have the absolute right to pardon myself, but why would I do that when I have done nothing wrong?" In the meantime, the never-ending witch hunt led by 13 very angry and conflicted Democrats and others continues into the midterms.
You're going to break it all down. Fox News senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge,
Good morning.
you've been a
Good
busy
morning,
man
guys.
lately. We're all trying to keep up every day with the latest developments. But on the pardoning, we had Kellyanne on yesterday, and she seemed to be frustrated that we're even using that word, that we're even talking about it.
I share her frustration. And listen, it's not Rudy Giuliani's fault. He didn't raise it. Chuck Todd did. In retrospect, had it been me, I would have said, I'm not going there. But
Now the president's tweeting about it.
Well, now the president's tweeting about it. Of course, we're talking about it, so it's part of the 24, 48-hour news cycle. So the argument in favor of the president can pardon himself is the pardoning power, according to the Supreme Court, is plenary, meaning full, final, complete. There's no check on it. The argument against that is the Constitution embodies the rule of law. One of the basic principles of the rule of law is a person can't be the prosecutor or the judge in his own case. I think the stronger argument is, most respectfully, that the president cannot pardon himself. There are pardons and there are pardons. President Trump has pardoned people who've already committed crimes. When President Ford pardoned then recently former President Nixon, Nixon hadn't been charged with anything. He just basically said, I'm wiping out, I'm preventing anybody from charging you with anything from the moment of your birth up to the date of my pardon. So there's a variety of ways the pardon power can be utilized.
He's not going to get indicted.
Well, I disagree with Rudy Giuliani, and I profoundly disagree with the image he created. Why he would create this image is beyond me. Now, I'm quoting him. The president could have James Comey shot in the Oval Office and couldn't be prosecuted
Why
for
even
it.
say that?
But the image is horrific and demeaning for everybody involved in it. But it's wrong on the law. If that were, or something like that were to happen, the president would be charged, would be indicted, but would not be tried until after he left office, because it is the trial that would take him away from being the president of the United States. But what are the odds of, I see you laughing, what are the odds of something like that happening?
Me getting back in the White House for anything.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Rudy's famous for using colorful language, and that's a little bit of it. The president has just in the last couple of minutes tweeted this out. What is taking so long with the Inspector General's report on crooked Hillary and slippery James Comey? Numerous delays. Hope report is not being changed and made weaker. There are so many horrible things to tell. The public has the right to know.
Well, he has
Transparency.
a legitimate gripe there, because we all expected that report to be out by now. We thought the Inspector General was going to testify about it tomorrow on Capitol Hill. If he is, it would have to come out today. Now, there are reports and there are reports, just like there are pardons and there are pardons. This particular type of report, if you're going to be quoted and if they go to you and present the quote and make sure it's what you said, that's a little time consuming. consuming. I think the president's fears that it's being watered down are legitimate fears. And if it appears to be watered down, I want to see the version before it was watered down.
Yeah.
And a word is DOJ is doing it. They're the ones who are not letting it go. The DOJ that the president put together.
The people that are supposed to work for the president.
Yeah.
His administration.
Yes.
All right.
Judge, I don't know how you sleep at night.
Only in America.
These days, you're a busy man.
It's like having a law class. All these hypotheticals.
Yep, all the
Good to
best.
see you.
All right. Meanwhile, 12 minutes before the top of the hour, one town is just days away from launching a new law aimed at gun owners. Hand in your weapons or pay the price. But gun rights groups aren't going down without a fight. The leader of one of those groups joins us next.
Plus, trouble in liberal levels, and many are going to Arizona. What's behind the mass exodus? We're going to tell you coming up. Listen to this. The village of Deerfield, Illinois is only about a week away from implementing an ordinance directing residents to hand in their what they consider assault weapons or face hefty fines. But gun groups won't let this happen without a fight. One of those groups is the Illinois State Rifle Association, and its director, the executive director, Richard Pearson, joins us from Chicago. Richard, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
What do they consider an assault weapon?
Well, they made up their own definition, but certainly an AR-15 or a 30-round magazine, all those kinds of things are considered assault weapons by the village of Deerfield.
Okay, and so you've got until next week to bring them down to the city hall, or what's going to happen?
Well, they can confiscate them by force, apparently, or they can fine you $1,000 a day, or probably both.
What's your problem with this?
Well, for one thing, when we passed the Concealed Carry Act in 2013, we preempted local ordinances from doing this sort of thing, and so it's a direct violation of state law, not to mention the Second Amendment.
Well, they say in Deerfield, they say that state and federal authorities have failed to regulate the possession, manufacture, and sale of assault weapons. So essentially, they're taking matters into their own hands because the feds and the state aren't doing anything.
That's true, but they have to answer the federal government and the state government, which they decided not to do.
It's kind of a slippery slope that they're going down, isn't it?
I'd say it's very slippery, yes.
All right. So where does this wind up going?
Well, right now we're looking for a temporary restraining order to prevent this from happening. It goes into effect June 8th, and if we get the temporary order, then it will stay all this activity until we have a full court hearing.
Mm-hmm. Richard, the people behind this in Deerfield say that they are doing things like this to try to deter some sort of a mass shooting. Is it a good idea in that regard?
Well, it doesn't help with mass shootings. If people want to do a mass shooting, they're going to do a mass shooting. Illinois is a little bit different than every other state because every gun owner in the state that has a FOID card goes through a background check every night of the year. So if you've looked at the history of Illinois, we don't have any of those, or very few of those in our history, and so we're much more tightly regulated than the other states anyway.
We did reach out to the Village of Deerfield's mayor and the board and have not yet received a reply. So you see this going to court, right?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Because what's at stake?
Well, we think it's a slippery slope. Everything is at stake for us, and so we will fight this all the way to the Supreme Court without question.
All right. Richard Pearson, the executive director of the Illinois State Rifle Association, joined us today from Chicago. Richard, thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
All right. You as well. What do you think about that? Email us, friends@foxnews.com. Meanwhile, it's a no-fly zone at the White House. President Trump uninviting, that is to say, the Philadelphia Eagles over the national anthem protest. Your email pouring in, plus the president just tweeted about it. Plus, Congresswoman Mia Love is going to be with us, Larry Kudlow, the president's economic council director, and Chris Kobach, the Secretary of State for the great state of Kansas. Straight ahead on Fox and Friends live from New York City.
Back it up, bring it on.